The rain fell in sheets across Manhattan's Upper East Side, turning the streets into rivers of gray. Each drop hammered against the pavement like bullets, relentless and cold. Sienna Brooks clutched the handlebars of her delivery bike, her knuckles white beneath soaked gloves. The insulated bag strapped to her back felt like it weighed 100 pounds, though it only contained 2 orders of sushi and some miso soup. Her vision blurred, from rain or exhaustion she couldn't tell anymore. 72 hours. That's how long she'd been awake, cycling between 3 different delivery apps, trying to make rent that was already 5 days late. Her phone buzzed again. Another order. Another address across town. Another $8 that might keep the lights on for her and her son one more day. The world tilted suddenly. Sienna's hands slipped on the wet handlebars. Her bike skidded and she felt herself falling in slow motion. The pavement rushed up to meet her and then everything went black. She didn't see the black Mercedes SUV that stopped abruptly in the middle of the street. Didn't hear the car doors slam or the rapid Korean being spoken in urgent tones. Didn't feel the strong arms that lifted her from the cold pavement, cradling her against an expensive suit jacket that would be ruined by the rain and the blood from the cut on her forehead. Minjun Kong looked down at the unconscious woman in his arms, and something in his carefully controlled world shifted irrevocably. 30 minutes earlier, Minjun had been sitting in the back of his Mercedes, reviewing shipping manifests that represented millions in monthly revenue. Legitimate electronics. Gray market pharmaceuticals. High-end counterfeits that would never be traced back to him. The Kong family empire ran on precision, timing, and the kind of fear that made grown men cross the street to avoid him. He was 29 years old and had been running the organization since his uncle's retirement 3 years ago. Some called him ruthless. Others called him fair. Everyone agreed on one thing. Minjun Kong was not a man to be crossed. "Sir," his driver Taeyong said from the front seat. "We should take the bridge. Faster route to the meeting." Minjun didn't answer. His attention had caught on something outside the window. A delivery cyclist weaving dangerously through traffic, clearly exhausted, moving with the kind of determination that came from pure desperation. He watched as she nearly collided with a taxi. Watched as she swerved, recovered, kept going. There was something about the set of her shoulders, the way she refused to slow down despite the storm, that made him think of his mother. His mother who'd worked 3 jobs to keep him and his sister fed. His mother who'd collapsed in a subway station from exhaustion and a heart condition she couldn't afford to treat. His mother who'd died while people stepped over her body because they were too busy to stop. "Follow her," Minjun heard himself say. Taeyong's eyes met his in the rearview mirror. "Sir." The delivery cyclist. "Follow her." They'd been trailing her for 2 blocks when she went down. Minjun was out of the vehicle before Taeyong could shift into park, his bodyguard Jae-sung scrambling to follow. The woman lay crumpled on the wet pavement, her bike twisted beside her. The delivery bag had split open, containers scattered across the street. Rain pounded against her still form. Minjun knelt beside her, his fingers finding her pulse. Strong. Steady. Relief flooded through him, surprising in its intensity. He didn't know this woman. Had no reason to care. Yet here he was, cradling her head with a gentleness that would have shocked anyone who knew him. "Sir, we should call an ambulance," Jae-sung said, holding an umbrella over them. Minjun looked at the woman's face, really looked. Beautiful, even soaked and unconscious. Brown skin, natural hair plastered to her head, features that suggested both strength and exhaustion. Her uniform was threadbare. Her shoes were held together with duct tape. The hands he held were calloused and scarred from hard work. On her wrist, a hospital band. He turned it gently. Caden Brooks, age 6. Metropolitan Children's Hospital. His blood ran cold. A child. She had a child in the hospital and she was out here delivering food in a storm because she had no other choice. "No ambulance," Minjun said, lifting her into his arms. She was lighter than she should be, like she hadn't been eating properly. "Take us to Dr. Han. Now." "But sir, the meeting is cancelled." Minjun's tone left no room for argument. "Everything is cancelled until I say otherwise." He carried her to the Mercedes, settling into the back seat with her still cradled against his chest. Jae-sung scrambled to collect her bike and the scattered delivery bag while Taeyong pulled into traffic. The woman stirred slightly, her head turning against Minjun's shoulder. She murmured something he couldn't quite hear. He found himself stroking her hair back from her forehead, checking the cut there. Not deep. Wouldn't need stitches. Who are you? He whispered, though she couldn't hear him. And why can't I leave you on that street like I should? His phone buzzed. 8 missed calls. A meeting with the Zhao family that represented a $5 million shipment. 3 texts from his uncle demanding to know why he'd gone silent. Minjun silenced his phone and held the stranger closer. For the first time in 3 years, something mattered more than business. Sienna Brooks woke to softness. That was the first thing her exhausted brain processed. She was lying on something soft. Not her lumpy futon with the spring that stabbed her in the back. Not the hospital chair where she'd spent the last 3 nights beside Caden's bed. Soft. Expensive soft. Her eyes flew open. Cream-colored ceiling. Crown molding. The faint scent of bergamot and something else. Sandalwood, maybe. Definitely not her apartment, which smelled like mold and the Chinese restaurant downstairs. Sienna sat up too fast. The room spun. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her. Easy, a male voice said. Slightly accented. You have a concussion. Dr. Han said you need to move slowly. She turned her head and found herself staring into the most intense dark eyes she'd ever seen. The man was Korean, late 20s, with sharp features that would have been beautiful if they weren't so severe. He wore an expensive suit, though the jacket was missing and his white shirt was wet, clinging to a frame that suggested he spent time in the gym. Sienna's survival instincts, honed by 3 years on New York streets, screamed at her. She jerked away from his touch, scrambling to the edge of the bed, and it was a bed, a massive one, in what looked like a bedroom that cost more than she made in a year. Who are you? Her voice came out hoarse. Where am I? Where's my bike? The man held up his hands, palm out. Non-threatening. But Sienna had learned that men who looked non-threatening were often the most dangerous. My name is Minjun Kong, he said calmly. You collapsed while making a delivery. I brought you here so my doctor could examine you. Your bike is downstairs, undamaged. You're safe. Safe, Sienna repeated, laughing bitterly. She pressed her fingers to her temples, trying to think through the pounding in her head. I don't know you. I'm in a strange place. That's not safe. That's kidnapping. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. You're not being held against your will. The door is unlocked. You can leave whenever you want. He gestured to a chair where her delivery uniform had been dried and folded. But I'd prefer you stay until Dr. Han confirms you're stable. You hit your head hard. Sienna's hand went to her forehead, feeling the bandage there. The movement made her wince. Her whole body ached like she'd been hit by a truck. How long was I out? 45 minutes. Her heart stopped. 45. She lunged for her clothes, her phone. Oh God, I missed 3 deliveries. They're going to deactivate my account. I need that money. My son. Caden, Minjun said quietly. Sienna froze, her hand on her phone. She turned slowly to face him, fear replacing confusion. How do you know my son's name? Your hospital bracelet. He pointed to her wrist. I saw he was admitted to Metropolitan Children's. I took the liberty of calling. He's stable. Your friend. He glanced at his own phone. Jasmine is with him. She says to tell you she'll stay as long as needed. The relief was so intense it made Sienna's knees buckle. She sank onto the edge of the bed. You called the hospital. You talked to Jazz. I thought you'd want to know he was safe while you recovered. Tears burned behind Sienna's eyes. She couldn't remember the last time someone had anticipated what she needed, had taken care of something without her having to beg for help. Thank you, she whispered. Then, remembering where she was and who she was with, she straightened her spine and met his gaze. But I need to leave now. I have to get back to work. I have deliveries to make, rent to pay, and my son needs. What does Caden need? Minjun interrupted gently. The hospital bill is what, 20,000 so far? More. And you're working yourself to death trying to pay it while keeping him fed and housed. Sienna's face burned with shame and anger. That's none of your business. You're right. It's not. He stood, moving to a desk and retrieving an envelope. But I'm making it my business. Consider this payment for disturbing your work tonight. He held out the envelope. Sienna stared at it like it might bite her. I don't take money from strange men. Then consider it payment for a service you're going to provide. Her stomach dropped. I'm not that kind of. A job, Minjun said firmly, cutting off her accusation. A real job. I own several businesses in the city. Restaurants, shipping companies, legitimate enterprises that need good people. You're clearly a hard worker. I'm offering you employment. Sienna wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed this was too good to be true, that men like him, men with expensive apartments and tailored suits and the kind of power that let them make phone calls to hospitals and get information immediately, didn't help women like her without expecting something in return. But then she thought of Caden. Sweet, brave Caden who'd been fighting pneumonia for a week. Who needed antibiotics she couldn't afford and a follow-up appointment she'd have to choose between and groceries. What kind of job? She asked carefully. Minjun's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. For now. Rest. Recover. We'll discuss details tomorrow. I can't just rest. I told you I have bills. He placed the envelope on the bed beside her. $5,000. Enough to cover your immediate expenses and Caden's current hospital bill. No strings. No expectations. Consider it an advance on your first paycheck. Sienna picked up the envelope with shaking hands. Inside she could see the edge of crisp bills. $5,000. More money than she'd seen in one place since before Caden's father left. Why? The question burst out. You don't know me. I could be anyone. Why would you do this? For the first time Minjun's controlled expression cracked. Something raw and painful flickered across his face. Because I watched my mother work herself to death, he said quietly. Because she collapsed in a subway station and no one stopped to help. Because I was 15 and powerless and I swore I'd never let that happen to someone else if I had the power to prevent it. The honesty in his voice made Sienna's chest tighten. This wasn't charity. This was personal. I'm sorry about your mother, she said softly. Don't be sorry. Be smart. He moved toward the door. Dr. Han will check on you in an hour. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry. The guest room is yours for the night if you need it. Tomorrow we'll talk about your future. Wait, Sienna called as he reached for the door handle. I don't understand. What do you want from me? Minjun turned back and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Honestly, I'm not sure yet, he admitted. But I saw you fighting through that storm, refusing to quit, and I recognized something. Maybe I just want to make sure someone with that much strength doesn't have to fight alone anymore. Then he was gone, closing the door softly behind him. Sienna sat on the expensive bed in the stranger's apartment, clutching $5,000 and trying to remember how to breathe. She should leave. Should take the money and run before whatever this was became more complicated. But when she looked at the envelope, she thought of Caden's hospital bill marked "Final Notice." She thought of their landlord's threats of eviction. She thought of the empty refrigerator at home and the delivery apps that would deactivate her account after tonight's missed orders. She thought of Minjun Kang's eyes when he'd mentioned his mother. The grief there, still fresh after what must have been years. Maybe, just maybe, this was the break she'd been praying for. The universe's way of saying she'd fought hard enough, sacrificed enough, and now someone was finally going to help instead of just watching her drown. Or maybe this was the beginning of something that would destroy her completely. Sienna closed her eyes and made a choice. She'd stay the night. She'd hear him out tomorrow. And if it turned out to be too good to be true, well, at least she'd have $5,000 to show for her mistake. Outside Minjun's bedroom, where he'd retreated after leaving Sienna in the guest room, he stood by the window overlooking Manhattan's glittering skyline. His phone buzzed incessantly. His uncle. His lieutenant. Business partners wondering why he'd disappeared mid-negotiation. He ignored them all. Instead, he thought about the woman sleeping in his guest room. Sienna Brooks. Mother. Fighter. Someone so exhausted she'd literally collapsed from overwork but who'd still looked at him with suspicion instead of gratitude. Most people in his world wanted something from him. Power. Protection. Money. She'd looked at him like he was a problem to be solved. A complication in an already complicated life. It was refreshing. Intoxicating even. Sir, Jae-sung knocked softly. Your uncle is demanding an explanation for tonight. Tell him I'm handling a personal matter. He won't accept that answer. He'll have to. Minjun turned from the window. And Jae-sung? I want full background on Sienna Brooks by morning. Employment history, family situation, everything. But discreetly. I don't want her to know. Of course, sir. Jae-sung hesitated. May I speak freely? You always do. She's not like the others. The socialites, the business associates' daughters. She's an outsider to our world. Bringing her in could be complicated. Minjun smiled, sharp and dangerous. Good. I've been bored with simple. After Jae-sung left, Minjun returned to the window. Somewhere in this city his rivals were moving against him. Somewhere shipments needed overseeing. Somewhere his empire demanded his attention. But all he could think about was the woman with the hospital bracelet and the duct-taped shoes who'd looked at $5,000 like it was a miracle and a trap in equal measure. He'd told her the truth, he wasn't sure what he wanted from her yet. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't going to let her go back to killing herself on those streets. Not while he had the power to give her a better option. Even if that option meant pulling her into a world far more dangerous than rain-slicked roads and missed deliveries. Minjun Kong had just made Sienna Brooks his responsibility. And he never took his responsibilities lightly. Sienna woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. Real coffee, not the instant crystals she mixed with lukewarm tap water at home. For a disorienting moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The rain. The collapse. Minjun Kang's intense dark eyes and his impossible offer. She sat up slowly, testing her body for damage. Her head still ached, but the pounding had subsided to a dull throb. The bandage on her forehead felt fresh. Someone must have changed it while she slept. That thought should have alarmed her, but exhaustion had apparently overridden her survival instincts. The envelope sat on the nightstand where she'd left it. Still full of money. Still real. Her phone showed 6:47 a.m. and 37 missed notifications. 3 from the delivery apps, all saying the same thing. Account suspended for missed deliveries. 5 from her landlord, increasingly threatening. 2 from the hospital billing department. And 15 from Jasmine, starting worried and progressing to relieved. Go, where are you? Caden is asking for you. Some man called saying you were hurt but okay? Who is Minjun Kong? He paid Caden's hospital bill. All of it. Sienna Marie Brooks, you better call me right now. Sienna's hands shook as she read the last message. He'd paid Caden's bill. All $23,000 of it. Without asking. Without permission. The door opened softly and a woman in her 50s entered carrying a tray. She smiled warmly, speaking in accented English. Good morning, Miss Brooks. I'm Mrs. Han, the housekeeper. Mr. Kong asked me to bring you breakfast and fresh clothes. Your uniform was damaged, so I took the liberty of selecting something from our storage. She set down the tray, toast, fruit, eggs, and that coffee Sienna could smell, and laid out clothes on the chair. Dark jeans, a soft sweater, everything in exactly her size. How did he know my size? Sienna asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Mrs. Han's smile didn't waver. Mr. Kong is very observant. He also asked me to tell you that Dr. Han will check on you after breakfast. And Mr. Kong would like to speak with you at 9 if you're feeling well enough. And if I want to leave before then? Then Taeyong will drive you wherever you need to go. Mrs. Han moved toward the door then paused. Miss Brooks, I've worked for Mr. Kong for 5 years. He's a good man even if the world doesn't always see it. Whatever he's offering you, I hope you'll consider it carefully. After she left, Sienna stared at the breakfast tray. When was the last time someone had made her breakfast? Before Caden's father left, probably. 3 years ago. She ate mechanically, barely tasting the food, her mind racing. Minjun had paid Caden's hospital bill. That wasn't just kindness. That was a statement. A claim. In her world, the world of women struggling to survive, you learned quickly that men didn't give without expecting to take. Her ex had been charming too at first. Generous. Then the generosity became control, the charm became cruelty. And by the time she realized she was trapped, she was pregnant and broke. But Minjun wasn't her ex. Something about the way he'd looked at her last night, with that strange mixture of intensity and respect, felt different. Or maybe she was just desperate enough to ignore red flags because the alternative was going back to that apartment with the broken heater and the eviction notice. Sienna showered in the attached bathroom, which was larger than Caden's hospital room and stocked with products that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. The hot water was endless. She stood under it longer than she should have, letting the heat work out the knots in her shoulders. When she emerged, wrapped in a towel that was softer than any blanket she owned, she found the clothes Mrs. Hahn had left. They fit perfectly. Of course they did. At 8:55, Sienna made her way out of the guest room. The apartment was massive. High ceilings, modern furniture, art on the walls that was probably original. Everything screamed money and power. She found Minjun in a study, sitting behind a desk with multiple monitors showing what looked like shipping manifests and security camera feeds. He'd changed into a fresh suit, charcoal gray with a white shirt, no tie. He looked up as she entered and something in his expression softened. "Sienna, how are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck and woke up in an alternate reality." She stayed in the doorway, maintaining distance. "You paid Caden's hospital bill." "Yes." "I didn't ask you to do that." "No, you didn't." Minjun stood, coming around the desk but stopping several feet away, giving her space. "But your friend Jasmine mentioned that the hospital was threatening to transfer him to a county facility if the bill wasn't addressed." "I handled it." "Why?" Sienna's voice cracked despite her best efforts. "You don't know me. You don't know my son. Why would you do that?" Minjun was quiet for a moment, studying her face. "Have you ever watched someone you love suffer because of something as arbitrary as money? Because the system values profit over people. Every day for the last 3 years. Then you understand why I couldn't let it continue when I had the power to stop it." He moved to the window, hands in his pockets. "My mother died because we couldn't afford her medication. I was powerless then. I'm not powerless now. So this is about your mother, not me." He turned back and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "At first maybe. But I spent last night researching you, Sienna Brooks. Do you want to know what I learned?" She did and didn't. "I'm guessing you're going to tell me either way." A slight smile touched his lips. "You're 27. Originally from Atlanta. You moved to New York 5 years ago for a job that never materialized. You met Marcus Taylor, got pregnant, had Caden. Marcus left when Caden was 2 months old and emptied your joint account on the way out. You've been working multiple jobs ever since. 3 years ago, you started delivery driving to make ends meet." Sienna's face burned. Hearing her failures laid out so clinically hurt more than she expected. "You have an associate's degree in early childhood education," Minjun continued, his voice gentler now. "You wanted to be a teacher. You scored in the top 5% of your class. Your professors wrote letters of recommendation calling you gifted." He moved closer. "You're not just a survivor, Sienna. You're exceptional. And you've been so busy surviving that you haven't had the chance to prove it." Tears stung her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. "Stop." "Why?" "Because you're making me hope, and hope is dangerous when you're poor." Minjun closed the distance between them, stopping just inches away. "Then let me offer you something better than hope. Let me offer you certainty." "Nothing is certain." "I am." His voice dropped lower. "Work for me, Sienna. Let me give you the stability you need to build a real life for you and Caden. No more killing yourself on delivery bikes. No more choosing between rent and food." "Doing what?" She forced herself to meet his eyes. "What exactly does working for you mean?" "For now, it means managing one of my restaurants. Legitimate work, legal salary, health insurance for you and Caden. Eventually it might mean more." "More?" Minjun hesitated and Sienna saw something vulnerable flicker across his face. "I operate in a complicated world, Sienna. Not everything I do is strictly legal, though nothing directly harms innocent people. But my world has rules, hierarchies, expectations. People who work for me are under my protection, which is both a shield and a responsibility." "The Mafia," Sienna said flatly. "You're in the Korean Mafia." He didn't deny it. "The organization I run controls significant territory in New York. We provide protection, mediate disputes, move goods that exist in legal gray areas. But we also support the Korean community, fund businesses, keep our neighborhoods safe." He paused. "I won't lie to you about what I am. But I also won't let that stop me from offering you a way out of the life that's killing you." Sienna should walk away. Should take her son and run as far from Minjun Kong as possible. But she thought of Caden in that hospital bed, his small body fighting pneumonia because their apartment was too cold and damp. She thought of the eviction notice. The empty refrigerator. The delivery apps that had suspended her account. If I say yes, she said slowly, what exactly am I agreeing to? Employment at Hanul, my flagship restaurant. Starting salary $75,000 a year with benefits. You'll manage the front of house, coordinate with staff, handle customer relations. The work is demanding but legitimate. 75,000. Sienna made 22,000 last year, working herself to exhaustion. And the catch? The catch is that people who work for me become part of my world. You'll be under my protection, which means rival organizations might see you as leverage against me. You'll attend certain events at my side representing my interests. And you'll be loyal. I reward loyalty generously, but I don't tolerate betrayal. You're asking me to be more than an employee. I'm asking you to trust me. Minjun reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His touch was warm, surprisingly gentle. I can't promise it won't be complicated. But I can promise that you and Caden will be safe, provided for, and protected. Always. Sienna looked down at their joined hands. His were smooth, manicured, the hands of someone who'd never had to scrub floors or count pennies. Hers were scarred, calloused, the hands of someone who'd fought for every scrap. I need to see Caden, she said. I need to talk to him before I decide anything. Of course. Minjun squeezed her hand gently before releasing it. Taeyong will drive you to the hospital. Take all the time you need. But Sienna. He waited until she met his eyes. Whatever you decide, the hospital bill is paid. Consider it a gift with no strings. You don't owe me anything. That generosity, more than anything else, made her decision. I'll think about your offer, she said quietly. And I'll give you an answer by tonight. Minjun's smile was like sunrise. That's all I ask. Caden was awake when Sienna arrived, propped up in his hospital bed watching cartoons on the small TV. Her 6-year-old son looked so small in the adult-sized bed, his brown skin slightly ashen, his breathing still a bit labored. But his face lit up when he saw her. Mama. He tried to sit up too fast and started coughing. Sienna was at his side instantly, helping him settle, rubbing his back until the coughing subsided. Easy, baby. Easy. Where were you? Miss Jess said you got hurt. Caden's eyes were wide with worry. Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. I just had a little accident, but I'm all better now. She kissed his forehead, checking for fever. Cooler than yesterday. The antibiotics were working. Jasmine appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, expression torn between relief and fury. Girl, we need to talk. I know. The nurses said a man paid Caden's entire bill. $23,000 just like that. Jasmine lowered her voice. Who is he, Sienna? And please tell me you didn't do something stupid. Can we talk outside? They stepped into the hallway, leaving Caden with his cartoons. Jasmine had been Sienna's best friend since their first day as neighbors 3 years ago. She was the only person Sienna trusted with Caden when work demanded it. I collapsed making a delivery, Sienna said quietly. He saw it happen and helped me. Took me to his doctor, let me stay the night to recover. And yes, he paid Caden's bill. Out of the goodness of his heart? Jasmine's skepticism was clear. Men like that don't help for free. What does he want? He offered me a job. Restaurant management. $75,000 a year. Jasmine's eyes went wide. 75. Girl, what kind of restaurant? Is this some pretty woman situation? Because if he thinks it's legitimate, Sienna interrupted. At least the restaurant part is. But Jazz, he struggled to find the words. He's connected. Like organized crime connected. Oh hell no. Jasmine grabbed her arm. Sienna, you cannot get mixed up with the mob. You have a son to think about. I know. But I also have bills I can't pay and delivery apps that suspended my account. I'm 3 days from eviction, Jazz. What am I supposed to do? Not this. Anything but this. Easy to say when you're not the one choosing between rent and food. The harsh words made Jasmine flinch. Sienna immediately regretted them. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. No, you're right. Jasmine's voice softened. I can't understand what you're going through. But as I'm scared for you. Men with that kind of power, that kind of money, they don't let go easily. Once you're in, you might not be able to get out. I know. Sienna leaned against the wall, exhaustion washing over her again. But what choice do I have? Keep working myself to death? Watch them discharge Caden to some county hospital because I can't pay? Hope something magically changes. There has to be another way. If there is, I haven't found it in 3 years of looking. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Jasmine sighed. If you do this, I'm here. Whatever you need, whenever you need it. But promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't lose yourself trying to save Caden. I promise. Back in Caden's room, Sienna sat on the edge of his bed, stroking his hair. Her son looked at her with those big brown eyes that saw too much for someone so young. Mama, are you sad? No, baby. Just tired. Miss Jas says we might have to move soon. To a new apartment. Caden's voice was small. Will my new room be cold like our old one? Sienna's heart cracked. Caden had been asking for a warmer room for months. She'd been running space heaters she couldn't afford, piling blankets on his bed, anything to keep him comfortable. And it hadn't been enough. That's why he'd gotten pneumonia in the first place. What if I told you we might move to a really nice apartment? She said carefully. With heat that works and your own bedroom and everything? Caden's eyes widened. Really? How? Mama got a new job. A good one. But it means some things are going to change. What kind of things? How did she explain this to a 6-year-old? That they'd be entering a world she didn't understand, accepting protection from a man she barely knew, all because she was out of options? We're going to meet some new people, she said finally. And there's going to be a man, Mr. Kong, who's going to help us. He's the one who made sure you got the medicine you needed. Is he nice? Sienna thought of Minjun's intensity, his controlled power, the way he'd spoken about his mother with such raw grief. I think so. But we're going to be careful anyway, okay? We're going to take things slow and make sure we're safe. Okay, Mama. Caden yawned, his eyelids drooping. The antibiotics always made him sleepy. I trust you. Those 3 words nearly destroyed her. I trust you. Her 6-year-old son trusted her to keep him safe, to make the right choices, to protect him from the world. And she was about to bring them into the orbit of a man who admitted he operated outside the law. A man whose world included rivals and violence and complications she couldn't imagine. But that same man had paid $23,000 without hesitation. Had offered her stability and protection. Had looked at her like she mattered. Sienna stayed with Caden until he fell asleep, then pulled out her phone. She found Minjun's number. He'd texted it to her that morning and typed carefully. I'll take the job. When do I start? The response came within seconds. Monday. Take the weekend to move. I'll send movers to help. And Sienna, thank you for trusting me. I won't let you regret it. She stared at the message, hoping he was right. Praying this wasn't a mistake she'd spend the rest of her life paying for. Outside Caden's hospital room, she didn't see the man in the dark coat watching from the end of the hallway. Didn't see him take a photo of her and send it with a simple message. Kong has a new weakness. Name Sienna Brooks. Son, Caden, age 6. Currently at Metropolitan Children's. The man who received that message smiled coldly. Victor Chai had been waiting for Minjun Kong to show vulnerability. Now he finally had leverage. Minjun's office, same time. Minjun read Sienna's text 3 times, unable to suppress the satisfaction that bloomed in his chest. She'd said yes. She was trusting him with her future, with her son's safety. The weight of that responsibility should have given him pause. Had it felt right. Like something had clicked into place that he hadn't known was misaligned. Sir, Jisung entered without knocking, his expression grim. We have a problem. Minjun looked up from his phone. What kind of problem? Victor Chai's men were at Metropolitan Children's Hospital this morning. They photographed Sienna Brooks and her son. Ice flooded Minjun's veins. Victor Chai was his most persistent rival, constantly testing boundaries, looking for weaknesses. And Minjun had just handed him one. How many men? 2 that we identified. They left after getting their photos. Minjun was already moving, grabbing his jacket. Get Taeyong. We're going to the hospital now. And send a security detail to Sienna's apartment. She and Caden are not to be left unprotected for a single moment. Sir, if you move this aggressively, you'll be confirming that she matters to you. She does matter. Minjun's voice was steel. And anyone who threatens her will learn exactly what that means. The drive to the hospital took 12 minutes, though it felt like hours. Minjun's mind raced through scenarios, contingencies. Ways to neutralize Victor before this escalated. He should have anticipated this. Should have had protection in place from the moment he decided to help Sienna. He'd let his emotions override his strategy and now she was vulnerable. He found her in the hospital cafeteria, drinking bad coffee and staring at nothing. She looked up as he approached, surprise flickering across her face. Minjun, what are you doing here? We need to talk. Privately. His tone must have conveyed urgency because she stood immediately, following him to a quiet corner. What's wrong? A rival organization knows about you and Caden. They photographed you this morning. He kept his voice low, controlled even as fury burned through him. I need to move you both somewhere safe until I handle this. Sienna's face went pale. Handle this how? However I need to. He pulled out his phone. I'm sending a security team to pack your apartment. You and Caden will stay at my penthouse until... Wait. She held up a hand. Stop. Just stop. Her voice was shaking. I agreed to a job, not witness protection. You can't just uproot my entire life because some rival took a photo. They know where you live, Sienna. They know about Caden. That makes you targets. Targets for what? What do they actually want? Minjun met her eyes. To hurt me by hurting you. That's how this works. They find what matters to someone and they destroy it to prove they can. I've been in your world for less than 24 hours and I'm already a target? Sienna laughed, but there was no humor in it. What happens in a week? A month? Am I supposed to live in hiding forever? No. You're supposed to let me protect you until I eliminate the threat. Eliminate. She repeated the word carefully. What does that mean exactly? Minjun didn't answer, which was answer enough. Oh God. Sienna sank into a chair. I can't do this. This is too much too fast. I have a 6-year-old son who just wants a warm bedroom, and you're talking about eliminating people. He knelt in front of her, taking her hands. They were ice cold. Sienna, look at me. She did, and he saw fear there. Not of him but of the situation. Of the world she just agreed to enter. I know this is overwhelming, he said quietly. I know you're scared. But I swear to you on my mother's memory, I will keep you and Caden safe. This threat is real but it's manageable. Let me manage it. How? By making it clear that touching you means war with me. By showing Victor Chai that the cost of testing me through you is higher than he's willing to pay. Minjun squeezed her hands gently. I've been doing this for years, Sienna. Trust my experience. You're asking me to trust you with my son's life. Yes. I am. They stared at each other, the cafeteria noise fading into background static. Sienna searched his face looking for something. Reassurance maybe. Or certainty. He tried to give her both. Finally she nodded. Hey. But I'm not going to your penthouse. Caden gets discharged tomorrow. We'll go to Jasmine's place. It's not on any public records tied to me. That works. But I'm assigning guards. Discreet guards. Caden doesn't need to know about this yet. Agreed. Minjun stood, pulling her up with him. Sienna, I'm sorry. This happened faster than I anticipated. But I promise you this will be resolved within days, not weeks. And what happens after it's resolved? Another rival appears? Another threat? She pulled her hands free. Is this just going to be my life now? Constant danger because I'm associated with you? The question hit harder than it should have. Because she was right, as long as she was connected to him she'd be a potential target. That was the reality of his world. I can't promise you'll never be in danger again, he admitted. But I can promise that anyone who tries to hurt you will regret it. And that you'll have resources and protection most people can only dream of. That's not exactly comforting. No, he agreed. But it's honest. Sienna looked past him back toward Caden's room. I need to think about this. Really think about whether I can handle what you're offering. Take tonight. But tomorrow when Caden is discharged, we need to move you both to safety. That's non-negotiable. She nodded slowly. Tomorrow. But Minjun, if anything happens to my son because of your world, there won't be anywhere you can hide from me. Understood. The fierce protectiveness in her voice, the steel beneath the fear, made something warm bloom in his chest. This woman, this exhausted delivery driver with duct-taped shoes, was threatening him. A man who controlled half of New York's Korean organized crime. And he found it absolutely captivating. Understood, he said softly. I'll have guards posted within the hour. They'll be invisible but they'll be there. Try to rest, Sienna. Tomorrow everything changes. As he left the hospital, Minjun pulled out his phone and made 3 calls. The first was to Jae-sung, ordering round-the-clock protection for Sienna and Caden. The second was to his intelligence network, demanding everything on Victor Che's current operations. The third was to Victor himself. Minjun Kong, Victor answered, amusement clear in his voice. I was wondering when you'd call. You took photos at Metropolitan Children's Hospital this morning. Did I? Must have been a coincidence. There are no coincidences in our business, Victor. Minjun's voice dropped to a deadly calm. So let me be very clear. The woman and child you photographed are under my personal protection. Any move against them is a move against me. She must be very special for you to make such a public claim. She is. Which means harming her becomes your last act on this earth. Victor laughed. Always so dramatic. But I hear you, Minjun. Though I have to say, caring about civilians is a dangerous weakness in our line of work. Then it's fortunate I'm strong enough to afford it. Stay away from my people, Victor. This is your only warning. He hung up before Victor could respond. In his car, Taeyong glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Sir, will threatening him be enough? No, Minjun said quietly. He'll test me. They always do. But when he does, I'll be ready. And Sienna and Caden will be safe. Whatever it takes. Because somewhere between picking up a collapsed delivery driver in the rain and watching her threaten him in a hospital cafeteria, Minjun Kong had made a decision that would change everything. Sienna Brooks wasn't just his employee. She wasn't just his responsibility. She was his. To protect. To provide for. To keep safe from every threat this world could throw at her. And God help anyone who tried to take her from him. Caden pressed his face against the car window, his eyes wide with wonder as the black Mercedes navigated through morning traffic. It was the fanciest car he'd ever been in, with seats that were softer than his bed at home and windows that went up and down with just a button. Mama, is this Mr. Kang's car? He asked, his voice still slightly hoarse from the pneumonia. Yes, baby. Sienna sat beside him, hyper-aware of the 2 men in the front seat. Taeyong driving, and another guard whose name she'd learned was Dongmin. Both professional. Both armed, though they'd been discreet about it. Minjun had insisted on the escort from the hospital to Jasmine's apartment. He'd also insisted on paying for Caden's discharge medications, setting up a follow-up appointment with a private pediatrician, and having Mrs. Han prepare a care package with soup and medicine. It was overwhelming. All of it. The generosity, the protection, the way Minjun had looked at her this morning when he'd come to oversee Caden's discharge personally, like she was something precious he couldn't bear to lose. Will we see Mr. Kong at Miss Jazz's house? Caden asked. Maybe later, sweetheart. He's a very busy man. But he'll visit, right? I want to say thank you for the medicine. Sienna's throat tightened. Caden was too young to understand that Minjun's help came with complications. Too innocent to know that the reason they were hiding at Jasmine's apartment was because someone had photographed them as a threat. They pulled up to Jasmine's building, a modest walk-up in Queens, nothing like Minjun's gleaming penthouse, but safe and off any official records. Taeyong opened the door for them while Dongmin scanned the street with professional paranoia. Jasmine waited in her doorway, arms crossed, expression wary. She watched the 2 guards with obvious suspicion as Sienna and Caden climbed the stairs. This is what discreet looks like, she muttered as Sienna reached her. 2 men in suits standing outside my building? They'll be less obvious once we're inside, Sienna promised. But Jasmine's apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom that always smelled like the vanilla candles she loved, felt smaller with Taeyong and Dongmin doing a security sweep. They checked windows, tested locks, and had a quiet conversation in Korean that made Jasmine's eyes narrow. Are they saying my locks aren't good enough? She demanded. They're saying we'll upgrade them, Taeyong replied in perfect English. Mr. Kong wants to ensure maximum security. We'll have a locksmith here within the hour. He's going to pay for that, right? Because I'm not. All expenses covered, ma'am. After the guards established a rotation schedule, one inside the apartment, one watching the building exterior, Sienna finally collapsed onto Jasmine's couch. Caden immediately curled up beside her, his small body still recovering from the illness. Mama, I'm tired, he murmured. I know, baby. Let's get you into bed. Jasmine had prepared her spare room for Caden, complete with extra blankets and a nightlight. Sienna tucked him in, watching his eyes droop immediately. The antibiotics and the week in the hospital had exhausted him. Sleep, sweetheart. I'll be right outside if you need me. Back in the living room, Jasmine had made coffee and was glaring at Dongmin, who stood by the window with military posture. Does he have to stand like that? Jasmine hissed. He's making me nervous. He's doing his job. His job is to make my apartment feel like a prison? Before Sienna could respond, her phone buzzed. Minjun. How's Caden settling in? Sleeping. He's exhausted but stable. Good. I'm sending Mrs. Han with food for the weekend. And Sienna, I need to see you tonight. There's something we need to discuss. Her stomach clenched. What kind of something? The kind that's better explained in person. I'll come to you. 8 p.m.? She glanced at Jasmine, who was watching her with knowing eyes. But Jazz isn't happy about the guards. Tell her I'm grateful she's keeping you safe. And that the upgraded security is a thank you, not an invasion. Despite everything, Sienna smiled. Sienna and Jasmine's conversation. Mrs. Han arrived at noon with enough food to feed them for a week. Homemade kimchi jjigae, bulgogi, banchan that filled Jasmine's refrigerator to bursting. She also brought clothes for Sienna, practical pieces that fit perfectly, and toys for Caden. Mr. Kong wanted to make sure you were comfortable, Mrs. Han explained with that warm smile that made Sienna feel both cared for and slightly uncomfortable. He's very concerned about your well-being. After she left, Jasmine turned to Sienna with raised eyebrows. Girl, this man is courting you. He's protecting me. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks like a man claiming his territory. Jasmine poured them both coffee. Paying your bills, sending food, providing security, making sure you have everything you need. That's not just protection. That's ownership. The word made Sienna flinch. He's not like that. You've known him for 48 hours. How do you know what he's like? I do. Sienna wrapped her hands around her mug. When he looks at me, Jazz, it's not like Marcus used to. It's not possessive or controlling. It's protective. Like I matter. You do matter. You've always mattered. You just needed someone to see it. Jasmine's voice softened. But be careful. Men who operate in his world don't love like normal people. They own. They control. They protect what's theirs because it's an extension of their power, not because they care about you as a person. How do you know that? Because my cousin dated a guy in the triads 10 years ago. It started just like this, generosity, protection, making her feel special. By the end, she couldn't leave the house without permission. Couldn't have friends he didn't approve of. When she finally tried to leave, Jasmine's jaw tightened. Let's just say she's lucky to be alive. Sienna's blood ran cold. Minjun isn't like that. You don't know that yet. Then I'll find out. But Jazz, what choice do I have? Go back to delivering food until I collapse again? Let Caden live in that freezing apartment? Hope that somehow, magically, things get better. She set down her mug with shaking hands. I'm out of options. This is the only door that's opened in 3 years. I know. Jasmine reached across the table to squeeze her hand. I know, and I'm not judging you. I'm just scared for you. Promise me you'll be smart about this. Promise me you won't lose yourself trying to survive. I promise. But even as she said it, Sienna wondered if it was a promise she could keep. Because already after just 2 days her life had transformed so completely that she barely recognized it. Bills paid. Son healthy. Security surrounding her. And Minjun Kong at the center of it all, looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. Minjun arrived exactly 3 minutes late, carrying a bag from a Korean bakery and wearing dark jeans and a black sweater instead of his usual suit. He looked younger this way. More approachable. Almost normal if you ignored the 2 guards who flanked him and the way Dongmin immediately straightened to attention. Miss Brooks. Miss Martinez. He nodded to both of them, then held up the bag. I brought hotagwaja. Korean walnut pastries. I thought Caden might enjoy them tomorrow. Jasmine's expression remained skeptical, but Sienna saw her eyes soften slightly at the gesture. Anyone who brought treats for Caden earned at least tentative approval. He's sleeping, Sienna said. But thank you. That's very thoughtful. May we speak privately? Minjun's eyes held hers. I have updates on the situation. Jasmine's protective instincts flared. Anything you need to say to her, you can say in front of me. Sienna started, but Minjun raised a hand. She's right. You're trusting her with your safety. She deserves to know what's happening. He gestured to the couch. May I sit? Once they were settled, Minjun on the armchair, Sienna and Jasmine on the couch like a united front. He leaned forward, his expression serious. Victor Chai made his move this afternoon, he said without preamble. He sent men to Sienna's old apartment building. Sienna's heart stopped. What? They didn't know you'd moved. The landlord told them your apartment was being cleared out for unpaid rent. They waited for several hours before realizing you weren't coming back. Minjun's jaw tightened. He was testing me, seeing if I'd really protect you or if my warning was empty. What did you do? Jasmine demanded. I sent a message back. Made it clear that any further attempts to locate or contact Sienna or Caden would be considered an act of war. He met Sienna's eyes. He'll back off for now. Victor's aggressive, but he's not stupid. He knows I have more resources and more allies. A direct confrontation would cost him more than he's willing to pay. For now, Sienna repeated. What about later? Later we'll have established you so thoroughly under my protection that touching you becomes unthinkable. Minjun's voice carried absolute certainty. In my world there are rules. Hierarchies. Once everyone knows you're mine. He caught himself. Under my protection you become untouchable. Jasmine snorted. So your plan is to parade her around like a possession until your rivals get bored? My plan is to integrate her into my legitimate business operations while making it clear that any threat to her is a threat to the entire Kong organization. Minjun's tone remained patient despite Jasmine's hostility. Sienna will manage Hanol. She'll attend business dinners at my side. She'll be visible and protected. That visibility is the shield. And what happens when the next Victor Chai comes along? Sienna asked quietly. When someone else decides to test you through me? Minjun was silent for a moment, and Sienna saw something dark and dangerous flicker across his face. Then I'll handle them. The same way I've handled every threat to my organization for the last 3 years. Decisively. The word hung in the air, loaded with implications Sienna didn't want to examine too closely. I need you to understand something, Minjun continued, his eyes locked on Sienna. I don't take responsibility lightly. When I claim someone is under my protection, I mean it absolutely. No one touches them. No one threatens them. No one even looks at them wrong without answering to me. That's not protection, Jasmine said flatly. That's obsession. Maybe. Minjun didn't deny it. But obsession keeps people alive in my world. Casual care gets them killed. Sienna's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Pretty boy can't watch you forever. Eventually you'll slip up. And when you do, we'll be waiting. Her hands shook as she showed Minjun the message. His expression went from controlled to murderous in seconds. When did you receive this? Just now. He was already on his feet, phone to his ear, speaking rapid Korean. Sienna caught words like trace and immediately, and find him. Jasmine grabbed Sienna's arm. This is what I'm talking about. You've been in his world for 2 days and you're already getting death threats. That's not a death threat, Minjun said, pocketing his phone. His voice was arctic. That's a taunt. Victor trying to scare you to make you doubt my protection. He crouched in front of Sienna, taking her trembling hands in his. Sienna, look at me. She did, and the intensity in his eyes was almost overwhelming. I will not let anything happen to you or Caden. Do you understand? I don't care what Victor sends, what threats he makes, what games he tries to play. You are under my protection, and that means something in this city. You can't be everywhere, she whispered. What if he gets to Caden when you're not around? What if? Caden will have 2 guards minimum at all times. 1 visible, 1 shadow. When he goes back to school, we'll have people embedded in the staff. When he plays outside, there will be eyes on him. Minjun's thumbs brushed across her knuckles. I know this sounds extreme, but this is temporary. Once Victor understands the cost of continuing this game, he'll move on to easier targets. And if he doesn't? Minjun's smile was sharp and cold. Then he becomes an example to everyone else who might consider testing me. But it won't come to that. Victor's smart enough to know when he's outmatched. A sound from the hallway made them all turn. Caden stood in the doorway, rubbing his eyes, his small body wrapped in one of Jasmine's blankets. "Mama?" I heard voices. Then he saw Minjun and his face lit up. "Mr. Kong. You came to visit." The transformation in Minjun was instantaneous. The cold, dangerous man vanished, replaced by someone gentle and warm. He stood, his expression softening completely. "Hello, Caden. I'm sorry if we woke you." "It's okay." Caden patted over on bare feet. "Are you and Mama friends?" "We are," Minjun said carefully. "I'm helping your mama with some things." "Like the medicine that made me better?" "Exactly like that." Caden studied him with that unnerving directness 6-year-olds possessed. "Mama says you lost your mama when you were young. That's sad." Minjun's breath caught. He glanced at Sienna, who gave a slight nod. She told Caden a simplified version so he'd understand why Minjun had helped them. "It is sad," Minjun agreed. "But it taught me to help other people when they need it. Like you and your mama needed help." "We did need help." Caden moved closer, fearless in the way children could be. "Mama works really hard, but sometimes we don't have enough money for things. She cries sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping." "Caden," Sienna started, mortified. But Minjun raised a hand gently. "That's because your mama loves you very much. She wants to give you everything and it's hard when you can't. But things are going to be easier now. Your mama has a new job and you're going to have a nice warm apartment, and you won't have to worry about medicine anymore. Because you're helping us?" "Yes." Caden considered this, his small face serious. Then he did something that made Sienna's heart stop. He hugged Minjun. Just walked right up and wrapped his small arms around Minjun's waist. "Thank you for helping my mama," Caden said, his voice muffled against Minjun's sweater. "She's the best mama in the world and she deserves good things." For a moment Minjun stood frozen, clearly not expecting the gesture. Then slowly, carefully, his arms came around Caden's small body. He closed his eyes and Sienna saw his jaw clench with emotion. "You're right," Minjun said quietly. "She does deserve good things. And so do you." When Caden pulled back he was smiling. "Will you come visit us in our new apartment? Mama says it's going to be really nice." "I'd like that very much." After Sienna got Caden back to bed, with promises that yes, they'd see Mr. Kong again soon, she returned to the living room to find Jasmine looking at Minjun with slightly less suspicion. "You're good with kids," Jasmine said grudgingly. "I had a younger sister. Before she died." Minjun's voice was carefully neutral. "I remember what it's like to want to protect someone small and innocent." The revelation settled something in the room. Jasmine's hostility eased another degree. "If you hurt her or that boy," Jasmine said quietly, "I don't care how many guards you have or how powerful you are. I will find a way to make you pay." Minjun smiled and it was genuine. "I'd expect nothing less. Sienna is lucky to have a friend like you." After Jasmine excused herself to give them privacy, Minjun moved to sit beside Sienna on the couch. Not touching but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I need to ask you something," he said. "And I need you to be honest." "Okay. Are you afraid of me?" The question caught her off guard. Sienna turned to study his profile. The sharp jawline, the intensity that never quite left his eyes, the controlled power in every movement. "Sometimes," she admitted. "When you talk about handling threats or making examples. When I see that look in your eyes that says you do terrible things without hesitation." She paused. "But I'm not afraid you'll hurt me or Caden. I'm afraid of what being connected to you might cost us." "That's fair." Minjun turned to face her fully. "I won't lie to you, Sienna. My world is dangerous. People will test you to get to me. You'll see things that might change how you view me. And once you're in, truly in, it's not easy to walk away." "Why are you telling me this?" "You already paid Caden's bills, offered me the job. I already said yes. Because I want you to choose this with full knowledge of what you're accepting." His hand moved to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "I want you, Sienna. Not just as an employee or someone under my protection. I want you in my life, in my world. But only if you want to be there." Her breath caught. "Minjun. You don't have to answer now. Take time. Get settled at Hanol. See what working for me actually looks like. But know that my endgame isn't just employing you. Keeping you permanently." The declaration should have terrified her. Instead, it sent a thrill through her body that she couldn't quite suppress. "That's moving fast," she managed. "I'm 29 years old. I've spent the last decade building an empire, making money, accumulating power. And I've been empty the entire time." His intensity pinned her in place. "Then I saw you in that storm, fighting to stay upright, refusing to quit, and something in me recognized something in you. I don't know if it's fate or coincidence or just timing, but I'm not going to ignore it. You barely know me. I know you work 3 jobs to support your son. I know you refused charity even when you were desperate. I know you threatened a mafia boss to protect Caden. I know you're strong and proud and terrified but doing it anyway." His thumb traced her lower lip. "That's enough for me to want to know everything else." Sienna should pull away. Should establish boundaries. Should remind him that she was vulnerable and poor and in no position to be making emotional decisions about a man who admitted he operated outside the law. Instead, she leaned into his touch. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "How to be with someone like you. How to navigate your world. How to keep Caden safe while getting closer to you. Then let me teach you. Let me show you that my world isn't just danger and violence. Let me prove that I can give you and Caden a life worth living." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression hardened. "What is it?" My people traced the text message. It came from one of Victor's known associates. Min-jun stood, his entire demeanor shifting back to the dangerous man who ran a criminal empire. "I need to handle this. Now." "Handle it how?" He looked at her, and for the first time she saw the full weight of what he was. Not just a man who'd helped her. Not just someone offering protection. But a leader who controlled territory through calculated violence and unwavering authority. "The way I handle all threats to what's mine," he said simply. "Decisively and publicly. So that no one else gets ideas. Min-jun. Stay here tonight. Dongmin will be outside and Taeyong will be in the building. I'll have this resolved by morning." He moved to the door, then paused. "And Sienna? When you wake up tomorrow, Victor Chai will no longer be a problem. Trust me." Then he was gone, leaving Sienna alone with Jasmine's warnings echoing in her head and the phantom warmth of his touch still on her face. She'd just accepted protection from a man who was about to do something she couldn't see but could imagine. Something violent. Something permanent. And God help her, she was grateful for it. The warehouse in Red Hook was neutral territory, which was why Min-jun had chosen it for this meeting. Victor Chai arrived with 4 guards, which Min-jun had expected. Min-jun brought Jae-sung and 4 of his best men, which Victor had also expected. What Victor didn't expect was for Min-jun to walk in carrying a tablet showing security footage from every location Victor's men had visited in the last 48 hours. "You've been busy," Min-jun said without preamble, setting the tablet on the rusted table between them. Sienna's old apartment. Metropolitan Children's Hospital. The elementary school where her son will enroll next month. The restaurant where she'll be working. He looked up and his expression was arctic. "Should I continue?" Victor leaned back, affecting casualness even as his jaw tightened. "I was simply gathering information. Due diligence. You were threatening my people to test my resolve." Min-jun's voice never rose above conversational, which made it more menacing. "So let me clarify what happens next. You will cease all surveillance of Sienna Brooks and her son. You will delete every photo, every piece of information you've collected. And you will spread the word through every organization in this city that they are untouchable. And if I refuse?" Min-jun pulled out a second tablet. This one showed financial records. Specifically Victor's offshore accounts and several transactions that were definitely not legal. "Then I send this to the FBI. Along with testimony from 3 of your former associates who've agreed to cooperate in exchange for protection." He watched Victor's face pale. "You'll be in federal custody within 24 hours. Your organization will fracture. Your territory will be absorbed. And your reputation will be destroyed." The silence was suffocating. Victor's guards shifted nervously. Jae-sung remained perfectly still, ready for violence but hoping it wouldn't be necessary. "You're bluffing," Victor said finally. "You'd never work with the FBI." "I wouldn't. Normally." Min-jun leaned forward. "But you threatened a woman who matters to me. You photographed her 6-year-old son. That changed the rules. I told you what she means and you tested me anyway. So now you get to learn what happens when I'm not bluffing. He stood, buttoning his jacket with precise movements. You have until Monday morning to comply. After that, the FBI gets everything, and you become a cautionary tale about what happens when you underestimate my commitment to protecting what's mine. You're starting a war over some delivery driver? Victor's laugh was forced. That's insane. No, Minjun corrected quietly. That's love. And love makes men do insane things. Fortunately for you, it also makes them offer second chances. Don't waste yours. He left without waiting for a response. Outside, Jae-sung fell into step beside him. Do you think he'll comply? He doesn't have a choice. The financial evidence is real and the FBI contacts are already established. Minjun climbed into his Mercedes. Victor's smart enough to know when he's beaten. By Monday this will be over. And if it's not? Minjun's smile was cold. Then he becomes an example. And Sienna never has to know exactly what that entailed. As they drove through the night-dark city, Minjun thought about the woman sleeping at Jasmine's apartment. About Caden's unexpected hug and his quiet admission that his mother deserved good things. They did deserve good things. Both of them. And Minjun had finally found something worth protecting more fiercely than his territory or his reputation. He'd found something worth becoming a monster for if necessary. By Monday morning, Victor Che's entire operation had quietly agreed to cease all interest in Sienna Brooks. Word spread through the Korean organized crime network. The woman and her son were untouchable. Minjun Kong had claimed them absolutely. And everyone knew that Minjun Kong never made idle claims. Hanul occupied the ground floor of a gleaming building in Koreatown, all glass and modern elegance. Sienna stood outside, staring at her reflection in the pristine windows. The woman looking back wore tailored black slacks and a cream silk blouse that Mrs. Han had delivered yesterday. Her natural hair was styled in elegant twists. She looked professional, confident. She looked like someone who belonged in Minjun Kang's world. The illusion shattered the moment she opened the door and 20 pairs of eyes turned toward her. The staff, servers, kitchen workers, hostesses, all stopped what they were doing to assess the new manager. Sienna could read the questions in their faces. Who is she? Why did Mr. Kong hire her? What makes her special? Miss Brooks. A woman in her 40s approached, her expression professionally neutral. I'm Park Min-seo, assistant manager. Mr. Kong asked me to show you around. Thank you. Please call me Sienna. Min-seo's lips curved slightly. Of course. This way. The tour was comprehensive. Front of house, kitchen, private dining rooms, offices. Hanul served high-end Korean fusion cuisine to Manhattan's elite. Reservation list 3 months out. Average dinner cost $200 per person. The kind of establishment Sienna had only seen from the delivery entrance. You'll oversee operations, Min-seo explained as they entered the manager's office. Sienna's office now, apparently. Staff scheduling, customer relations, quality control. Mr. Kong is very particular about standards. He expects excellence. I'll do my best. Your best needs to be exceptional. Min-seo's professional mask slipped slightly, revealing concern beneath. Miss Brooks, Sienna, can I speak frankly? Please. The staff knows you're important to Mr. Kong. They've heard rumors. Min-seo lowered her voice. They're wondering if you're qualified or if you're here because of other reasons. Heat crept up Sienna's neck. I see. I'm not judging. But you need to prove yourself quickly, or they won't respect your authority. And running a restaurant like this without your staff's respect is impossible. It was fair advice, delivered without malice. Sienna appreciated the honesty. Then I'll prove myself. Starting now. She spent the morning learning systems, reservation software, inventory management, staff protocols. Min-seo was patient but exacting, clearly testing whether Sienna could actually handle the responsibility. By lunch service, Sienna's head was spinning with information. Then Minjun arrived. He entered through the front door at 12:30 and the entire restaurant shifted. Staff stood straighter. Conversations hushed. The man commanded attention without saying a word. He wore a charcoal suit today, perfectly tailored, his hair styled back. Every inch the powerful businessman. But when his eyes found Sienna across the dining room, they softened with something that made her breath catch. Miss Brooks. He approached with measured steps, very aware they had an audience. How is your first morning? Challenging but good. Minseo has been incredibly helpful. Excellent. He glanced at his watch. I have a lunch meeting in the private dining room. Would you join us? I'd like to introduce you to some business associates. It wasn't really a question. Sienna nodded, smoothing her blouse nervously. Of course. The private dining room held 4 men, all Korean, all radiating the same controlled power as Minjun. They stood as she entered, polite but assessing. Gentlemen, this is Sienna Brooks, Hanul's new manager. Minjun's hand found the small of her back, a possessive gesture that didn't go unnoticed. Sienna, these are my business partners. Kim Dae-young owns the shipping company I mentioned. Lee Sang-hoon Real Estate Development. Park Jun-ho Import-Export. And Choi Min-woo who runs our restaurant group. Sienna shook hands with each, noting how they watched Minjun's hand on her back with knowing expressions. It's a pleasure, Dae-young said in accented English. Minjun speaks highly of you. He does. She glanced up at Minjun, surprised. He does, Sang-hoon confirmed with a slight smile. In fact, he's talked of little else for the past 4 days. Very unlike him. Minjun's jaw tightened fractionally. Shall we order? Throughout lunch, Sienna observed more than she spoke. The conversation ranged from legitimate business, shipping schedules, real estate acquisitions, to topics discussed in careful Korean that she suspected were less legal. But nothing overtly criminal. Nothing that made her uncomfortable. What did make her uncomfortable was the way Minjun's business partners kept glancing between them, clearly drawing conclusions about their relationship. After lunch, as Minjun walked her back to her office, she voiced the concern. They think we're together. Romantically. Yes. He didn't sound bothered by this. Minjun, that's going to complicate things. The staff already questions whether I'm qualified. If they think I'm just your girlfriend, then prove you're more than that. He stopped outside her office door. I have faith in your abilities, Sienna. Show them why. And what are we? The question escaped before she could stop it. Actually, you said you wanted me in your life, but we haven't defined what that means. Minjun glanced around. Staff were watching from a discreet distance and lowered his voice. What we are is complicated. What I want us to be is simple. But we'll discuss that tonight. I'm taking you to dinner. Somewhere we can talk privately. Minjun. 8 o'clock. I'll pick you up at Jasmine's. His thumb brushed her wrist, hidden from watching eyes. And Sienna? You looked beautiful commanding that dining room. Natural, like you were born for this. He left before she could respond, leaving her with a racing heart and staff members pretending they hadn't been eavesdropping. Minseo appeared at her elbow. So, you and Mr. Kong. It's not what you think. Isn't it? Minseo's expression was knowing. I've worked for him for 3 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Whatever this is, it's significant. She paused. Just be careful, Sienna. His world is more complicated than most people can handle. And caring about him comes with consequences. Sienna thought about Victor Che's threats. About the guards still stationed outside Jasmine's apartment. About the way Minjun had said he'd handle the situation decisively. I'm starting to understand that, she murmured. The restaurant Minjun chose was small, exclusive, tucked away in Greenwich Village. The kind of place that didn't advertise and required knowing someone who knew someone to get a reservation. They had the entire back room to themselves. You rented out the whole section? Sienna asked as he pulled out her chair. I wanted privacy. Real privacy where we can talk without anyone watching or listening. Minjun settled across from her. How was the rest of your day? Exhausting. I think I learned more in 8 hours than in my entire associate's degree program. She accepted the wine he poured. Minseo is terrifying but effective. The staff is skeptical but willing to give me a chance. And everyone definitely thinks we're sleeping together. Does that bother you? It bothers me that they might think I got the position because of it, not because of my qualifications. Then exceed their expectations. Make them forget to question why you're there because you're too good at your job to doubt. Minjun raised his glass. To new beginnings. They touched glasses and Sienna found herself studying him in the candlelight. He'd removed his jacket, rolled his shirt sleeves to his elbows. More relaxed than she'd seen him. Most normal. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. Why me? Really? You could have anyone. Women with connections, education, women from your world who understand how it works. Why choose a broke delivery driver with a 6-year-old son? Minjun was quiet for a moment, swirling his wine. Do you remember what I told you about my mother? That she died from a heart condition you couldn't afford to treat. She was a delivery driver too. For a Korean restaurant in Queens. His voice was distant, remembering. She worked 16-hour days trying to support me and my sister after my father died. One night she collapsed on the subway platform. Heart attack. People stepped over her body rather than help. By the time someone finally called 911, it was too late. Sienna's throat tightened. Minjun, I'm so sorry. I was 15. My sister was 9. We ended up in the system until my uncle found us and brought us into his organization. He met her eyes. I learned something that night on the subway platform. I learned that the world doesn't care about people like my mother. People who work themselves to death for minimum wage. People who sacrifice everything for their children. The system grinds them down and then forgets they existed. So when you saw me in the rain, I saw her. Fighting. Refusing to quit even when her body was failing. And I thought, not again. Never again if I can prevent it. He reached across the table, taking her hand. But then I got to know you and I realized you weren't just a painful memory. You were someone extraordinary. Strong and proud and fierce. Someone worth protecting not out of guilt but because you deserve it. Sienna's eyes stung with tears. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you threatened a mafia boss to protect your son. I know you chose to work instead of accept charity even when you were desperate. I know you're terrified of depending on me but doing it anyway because Caden's needs matter more than your pride. His thumb traced circles on her palm. That's not just survival, Sienna. That's strength. And I want that strength in my life permanently. Permanently, she echoed. Minjun, we've known each other for 5 days. I've made billion-dollar decisions in 5 minutes. When you know something is right, timing becomes irrelevant. This isn't business. No, he agreed. It's much more important than business. Their food arrived, an elaborate tasting menu that Sienna barely tasted. She was too focused on Minjun's words, the intensity in his eyes, the way he was looking at her like she was the answer to every question he'd been asking. What exactly are you proposing? She asked carefully. I'm proposing that we stop pretending this is just about employment or protection. I want you, Sienna. In my life, in my home, in my world. I want to wake up next to you. I want to teach Caden Korean and take him to baseball games. I want to give you both everything you've been denied. That's moving incredibly fast. Yes. And I understand if you need time. But I also need you to understand something. He leaned forward, his intensity almost overwhelming. In my world, when you claim something, you do it publicly and absolutely. Half measures get people killed. So if we do this, if you agree to be with me, it won't be casual. It won't be hidden. Everyone will know you're mine. The possessive language should have set off alarm bells. Instead, it sent heat through her body. And what do I get in return for being claimed? Minjun's smile was slow and devastating. Everything. Protection, obviously. Financial security. Opportunities you've been denied. But more than that, you get someone who will never let you face the world alone again. Someone who will fight for you as fiercely as you fight for Caden. Someone who sees you, Sienna, not just your circumstances. You make it sound perfect. It won't be. My world is dangerous. People will test you. You'll see things that might make you question whether I'm worth the complications. His honesty was brutal. But I promise you'll never doubt my commitment. Once I claim you, you're mine. Absolutely. Permanently. Sienna set down her wine with shaking hands. I need to think about this. Of course. Take the time you need. But Sienna. He stood, coming around the table to cup her face. While you're thinking, remember how it felt to have Caden's hospital bill paid. To not worry about rent. To sleep without anxiety eating you alive. That's what choosing me means. Not just for you but for your son. He kissed her forehead and the gesture was so tender it made her chest ache. I'll drive you back to Jasmine's. And tomorrow we'll keep building what we started. One day at a time, until you're ready to admit you want this as much as I do. 3 weeks later. Sienna had proven herself. The staff respected her now, won over by her willingness to work alongside them, her attention to detail, and the way she handled difficult customers with grace. Reservations were up. Reviews praised the improved service. Even Mincio admitted she'd been wrong to doubt Sienna's qualifications. But more than that, Sienna had found something she'd forgotten existed: purpose beyond survival. She'd also grown closer to Minjun. He visited Hanul daily, always professional in front of staff but stealing moments alone where he'd touch her hand, brush her hair back, look at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. They'd had dinner together 6 times now. He'd visited Caden at Jasmine's, bringing books and toys, teaching him Korean phrases that made her son giggle. He'd arranged for Caden to start at a prestigious private school with security embedded in the staff. And 3 nights ago he'd kissed her. Really kissed her, not just the forehead touches or hand brushes. They'd been in her office after closing, reviewing schedules, and suddenly he was pulling her up from her chair, backing her against the desk, and claiming her mouth with a hunger that suggested he'd been holding back for weeks. She'd kissed him back with equal desperation, her hands fisting in his shirt, her body arching into his. When they'd finally broken apart, both breathless, Minjun had rested his forehead against hers. "I'm running out of patience," he'd whispered. "Tell me you want this too." "I do," she'd admitted. "God help me, I do." "Then move in with me. You and Caden. Let me give you the home you deserve." Sienna had wanted to say yes immediately. But Jasmine's warnings echoed in her head. "Once you're in, you might not be able to get out." "Give me until the weekend," she'd said. "Let me talk to Caden. Make sure he's ready for this." Minjun had kissed her again, slower this time, worshipping her mouth like she was something precious. "Take all the time you need." "But Sienna, the answer is already yes. You're just working up the courage to admit it." He'd been right. She'd been falling for him since that first night in his guest room, watching him make her coffee with instant grounds like it was the most natural thing in the world. Now it was Friday evening. Caden was with Jasmine. Sienna stood in Minjun's penthouse, their potential future home, trying to imagine her life here. "What do you think?" Minjun asked from behind her, his hands settling on her waist. The penthouse had been transformed. The guest room was now a child's paradise. Space-themed walls, a bed shaped like a rocket ship, shelves full of books and toys. Her son's name was spelled out in glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. The master suite had been updated too. Softer colors, feminine touches, space in the closet that had clearly been made for her. Minjun had even commissioned a photo collage for one wall. Pictures of her and Caden that somehow he'd acquired, mixed with spaces left blank for new memories they'd create together. "You did all this in 3 weeks? I told you. When I want something, I'm decisive." His arms wrapped around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. "Say yes, Sienna. Stop fighting what we both know is inevitable." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. This man who'd saved her, protected her, given her opportunities she'd never dreamed possible. This dangerous, powerful, complicated man who looked at her like she hung the moon. "If I say yes, everything changes. You understand that?" "Everything has already changed." His hand cupped her face. "The moment you collapsed in that rain, the moment I picked you up, everything shifted. We can fight it or embrace it. But we can't go back to before. I have conditions." "Name them." "Caden's safety is non-negotiable. If your world ever threatens him, I'd die before I let anything happen to that boy. You know that. I need to maintain some independence. I can't be just your girlfriend or possession. I need to be my own person." "You are your own person. That's what I love about you. You've never let circumstances define you. Why would I want to change that?" The word love hung between them, unexamined but impossible to ignore. "And if I ever want to leave, then I'll let you go." His voice was steady despite the pain in his eyes. "I won't hold you against your will, Sienna. My protection isn't a cage. It's a choice. Your choice. Always." She searched his face for any sign of deception. Found only raw honesty and hope. "Okay," she whispered. "Yes. Caden and I will move in." Minjun's smile was like sunrise. He kissed her deeply, thoroughly, pouring 3 weeks of restrained desire into the embrace. Sienna melted into him, her hands sliding up to tangle in his hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Minjun rested his forehead against hers. "I'm going to make you so happy," he promised. "You and Caden both. I swear it. I believe you." And she did. Against all logic, against Jasmine's warnings, against every survival instinct she'd developed over 3 years of struggling alone, she believed him. 2 months later, the charity gala. Sienna stood in front of the full-length mirror in their bedroom. Their bedroom because she lived here now, with Caden settled into his rocket ship bed and Minjun's presence a constant in their lives. The dress Minjun had commissioned for tonight was stunning. Emerald green silk that hugged her curves, with a neckline that was elegant but showed enough skin to make Minjun's eyes darken when he'd first seen her in it. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo. Diamond earrings, a gift from Minjun for their 2-month anniversary, sparkled at her ears. She looked like someone who belonged in his world now. And the terrifying part was she felt like it too. "Mama, you look like a princess." Caden appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas. Jasmine was staying with him tonight while they attended the Korean American Business Association's annual charity gala. "Thank you, baby." She knelt carefully in the expensive dress to hug him. "You'll behave for Miss Jazz?" "I always do." Caden's 7-year-old wisdom made her smile. He'd grown so much in the past few months. Healthier, happier, thriving in his new school. "Is Mr. Minjun going to be wearing a tuxedo?" "I am." Minjun appeared, looking devastating in said tuxedo. "And you should be in bed, young man. School tomorrow." "But I want to see you and Mama leave." Caden protested. Minjun's expression softened. It always did with Caden. 5 more minutes. Then bed. "Deal. Deal." After Caden was settled with Jasmine, who'd grudgingly admitted that Minjun had exceeded her extremely low expectations, they descended to where Taeyong waited with the Mercedes. "Nervous?" Minjun asked as they drove toward the Plaza Hotel. "Terrified," Sienna admitted. "Your business partners are one thing. But this is the entire Korean American elite community. What if I say something wrong? What if they think I don't belong? Then they'd be wrong." His hand found hers. "Sienna, you've been managing Hanul for 2 months. Profits are up 30%. Customer satisfaction is the highest it's been in 3 years. You've earned your place in this world through competence, not just because of me. But they'll see me as your girlfriend first, manager second. Then prove them wrong. Like you've been doing since day one." He raised her hand to his lips. "Besides, you're not just my girlfriend anymore." She turned to find him holding a small velvet box. Her heart stopped. "Minjun. I know this is fast. I know conventional wisdom says we should wait." He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. "But I've never been conventional, and I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Marry me, Sienna. Let me claim you completely. Let me give Caden my name and my protection permanently. Let me spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You're insane. We've been together for 2 months. I was sure after 2 days. The rest was just waiting for you to catch up." His thumb brushed away her tears. "I love you, Sienna Brooks. I love your strength and your pride and the way you mother Caden. I love how you command a dining room and how you look at me when you think I'm not watching. I love everything about you and I want to make it permanent." "What about Caden? Shouldn't we ask him?" "I already did. Last week. He gave his approval, said, and I quote, 'It would be cool to have a dad again and Mr. Minjun is really nice.'" Minjun's smile was tender. "So the only person who needs to say yes is you." Sienna thought about the past 2 months. Living in the penthouse that had become a home. Watching Minjun teach Caden Korean while they cooked dinner together. The way he held her at night, whispering promises in the dark. The safety she felt, not just physical but emotional. The knowledge that someone finally had her back completely. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Minjun's kiss was fierce and possessive and filled with triumph. He slipped the ring onto her finger. Perfect fit, of course, and kissed her again. "Tonight," he murmured against her lips, "I'm introducing you as my fiancé. Everyone will know you're mine. Permanently." "Possessive much?" "Completely. You're the most valuable thing I've ever claimed, Sienna. I don't take that lightly." The gala was overwhelming. Hundreds of people in formal wear, champagne flowing, orchestral music filling the plaza's grand ballroom. Sienna recognized several of Minjun's business partners, along with politicians, celebrities, and society figures she'd only seen on television. Minjun kept her close, his hand on the small of her back or holding hers, introducing her to everyone as my fiancée Sienna Brooks. The reaction was mixed. Some greeted her warmly, genuinely interested in the woman who'd captured Minjun Kang's attention. Others were politely skeptical, clearly wondering what she'd done to land him. Then they ran into Victor Chai. Sienna recognized him immediately from the photos Jae-sung had shown her. The rival who'd threatened her and Caden, who'd backed down only after Minjun's decisive response. Minjun. Victor's smile was sharp. And this must be the famous Sienna Brooks. The woman worth starting a war over. Not starting, Minjun corrected coolly. Preventing. And it's Sienna Brooks Kong soon. We just got engaged. Victor's eyes flickered to her ring and something dark passed over his face. Congratulations. Quite a upgrade from delivery driver to Mafia wife. Victor, Minjun's voice dropped to lethal calm. Walk away. Now. I'm simply making conversation. You're insulting my fiancé. In public. At an event surrounded by witnesses. Minjun stepped forward, his entire demeanor shifting to something dangerous. Apologize. Or we settle this another way. The ballroom had gone quiet around them. People were watching, sensing confrontation. Victor's jaw worked. He was outmatched and knew it. Finally he turned to Sienna, his smile forced. My apologies, Miss Brooks. That was uncalled for. It's Miss Brooks Kong, Sienna corrected, surprising herself with her steadiness. Or it will be in 3 months. And for the record, Mr. Chai, I earned my position at Hanul through competence, not pillow talk. Feel free to check our quarterly reports if you doubt that. A ripple of surprised laughter ran through nearby guests. Victor's face reddened. Of course. Again, my apologies. He disappeared into the crowd. Minjun looked at her with such pride and desire that it made her breath catch. Have I mentioned lately that you're incredible? Not in the last hour. Oversight on my part. You're incredible and I'm the luckiest man in this room. The rest of the gala passed in a blur of introductions, congratulations and champagne. By the time they returned to the penthouse at midnight, Sienna's feet ached from her heels and her face hurt from smiling. But when Minjun pulled her into his arms in their bedroom, all the exhaustion faded. Thank you, he murmured, for saying yes. For trusting me. For giving me the family I never thought I'd have. Thank you for seeing me, she whispered back. For stopping that night in the rain. For giving Caden and me a chance at something better. Not better, he corrected, kissing her slowly. Best. You and Caden are the best thing that's ever happened to me. They made love that night with a new intensity. The knowledge that this was permanent, that they were building something lasting, adding depth to every touch and kiss. Afterward, wrapped in Minjun's arms, Sienna thought about the woman she'd been 3 months ago. Exhausted, desperate, barely surviving. She'd been so focused on getting through each day that she'd forgotten to dream about a future worth living. Now she had that future. A home. Financial security. A man who loved her fiercely and a son who was thriving. It had come with complications. Minjun's world was still dangerous, still morally gray in ways that sometimes kept her up at night. But it had also come with joy. Real lasting joy. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. Minjun's arms tightened around her. I love you too. More than I knew I was capable of loving anyone. 6 months later. The wedding was small by Korean standards. Only 200 guests. It took place at Hanul, which had been transformed into a floral wonderland. Traditional Korean ceremony followed by American vows, blending both their cultures into something uniquely theirs. Caden served as ring bearer, wearing a miniature tuxedo and taking his responsibility with adorable seriousness. Jasmine was maid of honor, having finally accepted that Minjun truly loved Sienna and would protect her always. When Sienna walked down the aisle, she saw Minjun's face transform. The controlled crime boss disappeared, replaced by a man overwhelmed with emotion. His eyes shone with tears he didn't bother hiding. The vows they'd written were simple. Minjun promised to protect, provide, and love her always. To be the father Caden deserved. To build a life worthy of the trust she'd placed in him. Sienna promised to stand beside him through danger and peace. To be his partner, not his possession. To love him despite the complications of his world, because of the man he was beneath the power. When the officiant pronounced them married, Minjun kissed her with such tenderness that several guests openly wept. At the reception during their first dance, Minjun whispered, "Thank you for collapsing in the rain that night. Sienna laughed. That's a weird thing to be grateful for. It brought you to me. I'd be grateful for any circumstance that did that. He spun her gently. I was empty before you, Sienna. Going through the motions. Building an empire but having no one to share it with. You gave me purpose beyond power. You gave me hope beyond survival. We saved each other, Minjun. Then let's spend the rest of our lives being grateful we both needed saving at exactly the right moment. Caden, now officially Caden Brooks Kong, danced with them both, his laughter pure joy. Sienna watched her son with Minjun and felt her heart overflow. This was family. Real, messy, complicated, but absolutely real. That night, alone in the penthouse that was now legally theirs as a married couple, Minjun made love to his wife with reverent intensity. Afterward, holding her close, he made one more promise. I will spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you never regret saying yes to me. I know you will, Sienna murmured, already half asleep. That's why I said yes. 2 years later, Sienna Brooks Kong stood in the kitchen of their penthouse, now truly a home filled with family photos and Caden's artwork and the comfortable clutter of people actually living there. She was watching Caden, now 9 and fluent in Korean, help Minjun prepare kimchi jjigae for dinner. Her hand rested on her swollen belly. 6 months pregnant with their daughter, who they'd already named Minseo after the assistant manager who'd become Sienna's closest friend. Hanul had expanded to 3 locations now, all under Sienna's management. She'd proven herself so thoroughly that no one questioned her qualifications anymore. The Korean American Business Association had even honored her as Entrepreneur of the Year. Minjun's organization had grown too, more legitimate now than it had been when they met. He'd been transitioning away from the gray market operations, focusing on legal businesses. It would take years to complete, but he was committed to building something their children could be proud of. Not that he'd completely left his dangerous world behind. There were still threats occasionally. Still rivals who needed reminding of boundaries. But Sienna had learned to navigate that reality, to be the steel behind his public face. Mama, come taste. Caden called. We need to know if it's good. She crossed to them, accepting the spoon Minjun offered. The stew was perfect. Spicy, savory, exactly right. It's delicious. You two are going to spoil me. That's the plan, Minjun said, kissing her temple. His hand joined hers on her belly, feeling their daughter kick. We've been spoiling you for 2 years now. Why stop? Because eventually I'll get impossible to live with. Impossible? Caden giggled. Mama, you're already impossible sometimes. Like when you make me do homework before TV. That's called good parenting, young man. As they sat down to dinner, their family, chosen and built from a moment of desperation and kindness, Sienna reflected on how far they'd come. From that rain-soaked street where she'd collapsed to this warm kitchen filled with love and laughter. She'd been looking for survival that night. Instead, she'd found salvation. Found a man who saw her when she was invisible to everyone else. Found a life beyond her wildest dreams. What are you thinking about? Minjun asked, noticing her distant expression. Just how grateful I am, she said softly. That you stopped. That you saw me. That you didn't let me face that storm alone. I told you on our wedding day, I'd be grateful for any circumstance that brought you to me. He took her hand, bringing it to his lips. Even a collapse in the rain. Especially a collapse in the rain, she corrected. Because that's when everything changed. For both of us, Minjun agreed. And as they shared dinner, the Mafia boss who'd learned to love, the delivery driver who'd learned to trust, and the son who'd brought them together, they knew that sometimes the best stories began with the worst moments. Sometimes you had to fall completely before someone could catch you. Sometimes you had to lose everything before you could find what actually mattered. And sometimes, in the middle of a storm when you were at your absolute lowest, the universe sent exactly the right person at exactly the right time. For Sienna Brooks Kong and Minjun Kong, that moment came when she collapsed in the rain and he refused to drive past. Everything else was just the beautiful aftermath of that one act of kindness that changed 2 lives forever. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.